Hello friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. Today we're going to be doing my August wrap-up. Now, August was my worst reading month of the year. It is official. I read the least amount of books and the least amount of pages. I didn't even crack 4,000 pages this month, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we jump into the books that I did finish in August, we're going to go through my reading stats for the month as always. So as a little overview, in August I did read 12 books. Across those 12 books, I read 3,840 pages. My audiobook listening for the month was up. I did listen to 46.66 hours of audio this month. That is one-time speed, not actual speed. I usually listen to it a lot faster than that, but that is how much each book was worth on audio, if that makes sense. My average rating for the month was 3.72, which is pretty standard for me. I did not fill out my books acquired or my books acquired from the library sheet, so those are both 0, but I did reread one book this month and I read 4 books that could be considered own voices in some capacity that I'm aware of. My genres this month were actually probably the most varied they've been all year, which is super interesting. I did read 1 contemporary book, 4 fantasy books, 1 nonfiction, 5 romance, and 1 thriller. In terms of the format of the book, I listened to 5 audiobooks, read 3 ebooks, and read 4 books physically. Looking at the audience of the books that I read, I did read 8 adult books, 3 new adult books, and 1 YA. Looking at the identity of the authors that I read from 1 genderqueer author this month, 1 male author, and 10 female authors. In terms of author status, I read 2 debut books, 6 books by authors who I had read before, and 4 books by authors that were new to me. Looking at my ratings for the month, I did rate 4 books 5 stars. I rated 1 book 4.5 stars, 1 book 3.5 stars, 2 books 2 stars, 1 book 1.5 stars, and then I did brutally DNF 3 books this month, which is crazy for me. I'm proud of myself. I needed to clear out my currently reading, and I did not want to finish any of these 3 books, and I don't regret it, so I'm proud of myself for doing that. Alright, with those reading stats out of the way, let's actually get into the books that I read in August. I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best, so definitely stick around to the end of the video to find out what my favorite book of the month was. My lowest ranked books of the month, of course, are going to be the ones that I did DNF, but I think probably my least favorite book that I DNF'd this month was It's Been a Pleasure, Noni Blake by Claire Christian. In this book, we're following our main character, Noni Blake, who I believe has just gone through some kind of breakup, so she's determined to go and find herself, and in order to find herself, she starts to sleep with a bunch of different people. Now, I did really appreciate the bisexual rep in this book. Noni's relationship that she got out of was a relationship with another woman, and she sleeps with both women and men alike throughout this process of trying to discover herself, but I just had so much difficulty connecting to the story. I really disliked Noni as a narrator. I thought she was very annoying, and I went into this book thinking it was going to be some kind of romance, and perhaps it was going to be a romance, but I did DNF this at the 47% mark, and up to that we had no hint at who the love interest might be, and I didn't really like that. I kind of wanted somebody to root for, but this book just felt all over the place. So yeah, unfortunately, this was my least favorite read of the month. Next, I am going to put A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I did end up DNFing this book at 16%. I started it back in June, and it's been sitting on my currently reading ever since, and I just could not bring myself to ever pick it up again, and I really don't want to. I've really struggled through the first book in the series, as well as the second book. I just don't think that the series is for me. I'm really happy it's brought so much joy to so many people. If you didn't know, we're following our main character, Feyre, in this story. In the first book, Feyre is human. She breaks this treaty that the human world has with the fairy world by killing a fairy, and so Tamlin, this fairy, takes her into fairy and holds her captive for a while. It's sort of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and that's all that happens basically in the first book. The first book does get good, like the last 100 pages, and I did like the romance that developed in the second book, but I just could not find myself connecting to any of the characters in this book. They were all very much like blank slates, self-insert type of characters, and I'm not a self-insert type of reader, so I had a lot of trouble rooting for the characters and relating to them because I just did not feel anything towards them because there was nothing really there for me to grab onto. And this third book just did not grab my interest at all. It was very boring, and I just really don't care for the characters, so I'm simply not going to force myself to finish this 700+ page book. And then next on my list is going to be the final 2 books in the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. I did read and finish Jade War, the second book in the series, and I did decide to DNF Jade Legacy, the third book in the series. I was reading this for the FANTASERIES book club, and I think I was the only person in the entire world that doesn't like this series, but I just was struggling so much with it, and I could not force myself to pick it up and finish it. If you didn't know, this is a trilogy following the Cole siblings, who are kind of the leaders of this faction of KCON, and they are in kind of a turf war with this other faction for control of the capital city. And the Call siblings, there are 3 of them. They are Jade warriors, which means they can harness the power of Jade, have kind of like magical abilities. Lots of people in this world can do this. They're all called Greenbone warriors, and they kind of protect the people that can't hold Jade or don't hold Jade. And there's a lot of like political intrigue going on as well as character work. And I just struggled so much with this series. I didn't really like the first one, and that dislike continued into the second book and just has been getting progressively worse as the story goes on. I cannot root for any of these characters. I really just don't connect to any of them or like any of them. And so all of the politics and the plot feel tedious to me because I really don't care what happens to these characters. I just don't. I don't know why. There's actually a few characters that people really love that I actually like hate with a passion. Like Hilo is like the favorite of everyone, and I genuinely hate him. I think he sucks. Everything that he does just pisses me off. I just am like, how does anyone like this man? He sucks so bad. Particularly in the beginning of the 3rd book, I'm like, oh my god, if I could kill you, I would. If I could kill you, I would. He's just horrible. He's awful. I hate him. And then like the one character I did kind of like Andon, their cousin, he just makes stupid, idiotic decisions in the beginning of the 3rd book. And I'm like, dude, I can't even root for you anymore. There's literally nothing for me in this series. So I did decide to DNF the last book at the 24% mark. This series just unfortunately was not for me. I wish I could have loved it as much as everyone else did, but it was just something that I could not get into. And then my least favorite book that I actually did finish was Omega's Gamble by Claire Cullen. If you watched my wrap up from last month, my July wrap up, you would know that I spent July reading a ton of shifter / werewolf romances, and that's kind of where this one came from as well. I was still kind of on that train at the beginning of the month, and I think this one finally derailed that train because I did not like it at all. In this book, we're following our main character, Prince Rain, and he is on this like tour of the galaxy. It's like an Omega tour, and they're trying to find alphas as mates. Stupid. But no one really wants Rain because he's like the 4th prince of this kingdom. He's like the black sheep of his family. He doesn't have like a lot of status, so no one really wants him. So he decides to go out on this one kingdom that no one ever disembarks from the ship for. This kingdom is like blacklisted basically from the tour. Prince Rain's like, I don't want to go home because my family sucks and they're gonna send me away. So this is my last and possibly only shot. I'm gonna see if anybody will take me on this island. Somebody does. The oldest prince, Prince Darien of this planet, agrees to marry Prince Rain for the like political gains that they think that it will take them. I don't know. This book was just silly. Me, when I'm reading a shifter like ABO dynamic romance, I like want that dynamic. That's why I'm reading it. Like, and this book was not smutty at all, which that's why I'm reading it. Hello? There was only one scene. It was at the very end. And I just did not think that the payoff was worth it. The romance was like kind of cute, I guess. The writing was so strange. This world was very odd because like in the beginning, all of the Omegas, they're all men. And don't get me wrong, I'm the one that's reading a male-male romance. Like I understand that. But just the fact that there were pretty much 0 female characters in this story. Actually, there was 1 female character in this whole world and tons and tons and tons of male characters. And it was never like explained if it was like a thing that like females didn't really exist in this world. There was no addressing of it, which I thought was very strange. And it just read very odd to me. Like I like in my male-male romances, obviously to have female characters or characters of other genders. Like why? There was just no explanation. There was no world building behind that concept that everyone was men. I'm just like, no, this is not gonna work for me. So I don't know, this just was not what I wanted it to be. Maybe that was my fault, but I did end up rating this one, I think, 1.5 stars. Another book that very much disappointed me this month was Never Been Kissed by Timothy Janofsky. This book follows our main character, Ren, who has never had a relationship throughout his life. He has never even been kissed. His 22nd birthday, I think. He's just graduated college and he's going to work his summer job at the movie theater. But on his birthday, he ends up getting drunk and he has this like all these drafts of emails that he wrote to people that he almost kissed that he drunkenly decides to send on his birthday. And in the morning he wakes up and he's like, oh shit, and just hopes that no one reads them. But of course, a couple of them do reach their destination and get read, and one of those was to Derek, who was Ren's like best friend in high school. Derek ends up responding to this email and he's like, I never thought of you that way and this never happened. And Ren's like, oh shit. He's just gonna brush it off, but he can't because Derek is also working at the drive-in movie theater this summer, so they have to work together, be professional. But Ren is very hurt also because Derek ghosted him in high school. He ghosted their friendship, so he doesn't understand like why that happened and why Derek had to do that. Anyway, they spend the summer growing closer and having a little bit of a romance. I really wanted to love this one. There is like a sexual rep in the way that Ren is demisexual, and he kind of discovers that throughout the course of this novel. I appreciated that rep. I did think that it was a little bit too like beat over the head, and Ren had never heard the word demisexual, which I thought was very strange. I'm not sure of like any queer person that grew up on the internet that doesn't know the term demisexual, and he had to have it explained to him, and I was like, okay. I don't know, it wasn't that big of a thing, but it kind of threw me out of the story. It felt like the author was just trying to explain it to the reader, but I feel like anyone that's reading this book probably knows what demisexual means. I just thought it was a little bit too much. That was quite a theme with the writing anyway. This book was only 275 pages or something, but it was so overwritten. Like every sentence was so long and ridiculous. There were so many metaphors. It just was, the writing style was so goofy and it just did not work for me at all. It felt very like amateurish. I know this is a debut and I have hope for Timothy's writing in the future, but this book just did not work for me at all. It made me very sad. But I did end up giving it 2 stars because I don't think it's like the worst thing ever written, but it just definitely didn't work for me, and it's already in my car to be on hold. The next book I have to talk about is Good Rich People by Eliza Jane Brazier. This is a book following our main character, Lila. Lila is married into this rich family, and her husband and her mother-in-law live together with her in this house, and they like to play this game where they take in somebody who is well off to board with them for a while, and they play this game and see who can ruin their lives. Lila, it turns out, kind of ruined the last game, so she is being forced to play this round, and they find this woman named Demi who's like very rich and wealthy to move in with them, and it is Lila's job to ruin her life. And Lila really does not want to do this, and she's having a lot of trouble doing this. Turns out that Demi also has some secrets, mainly that Demi is not who she says she is. I actually really enjoyed this book. I thought it was super interesting and like fucked up in a compulsively readable way. I really enjoyed getting into the minds of these characters because they were all just like crazy, unlikable, and weird, but you couldn't help but root for them. Definitely liked the kind of like girl power type of ending at the end of this book. I thought it was great. This definitely was a fun time. It's not like a new favorite book or anything. I probably would rate it, I think I officially rated it 3.5 stars, but it's more like a 3.75. Like it's a pretty solid thriller. I really enjoyed it. Definitely would recommend. Thought it was a lot of fun. It has pretty low Goodreads ratings, but I don't think it deserves them. Like I don't know why people disliked it so much. It's like campy and stupid for what it is, but I thought it was really fun. I liked it a lot. All right, now all the rest of the books on this list are 5 stars, or for, I think there's one 4.5, which I'm not sure why I rated it 4.5. I don't really remember. It's really good. And I'm not really quite sure where to put this book that I'm going to talk about next, but I think I'm just going to throw it in here. And that is Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I'm of course hosting the Twilight read along with quite a few of my other friends here on BookTube. August was our first month where we read Twilight, or I reread it, obviously for like the 80th time. I don't know how many times I've reread this book, but it's definitely a 5 in my heart. If you didn't know, this is a paranormal romance story between Edward the vampire and Bella the human. I don't know how you wouldn't know the story of Twilight, but that is what it is, and it is lovely and wonderful, and it is just such a fun, nostalgic time for me. I obviously don't think it's a literary masterpiece or anything, but I think it gets a lot more hate than it deserves. I think it's actually a pretty like smart book. There's a lot of foreshadowing in it. I just have such a fun time reading it always, and it's definitely not too late to join the read along if you would like to read along with us. We are reading A New Moon in September, and I will link all the information for it down below if you're interested. The next book I want to talk about is Presidential Chaos by Saxon James. This is the 3rd book in her Frat Wars series that I've been reading and loving this year. This book follows our main characters Zeke and Charles. Zeke and Charles are presidents of the opposing frats from the name Frat Wars. It's these 2 frats that are rivals in everything that they do. So we have a bit of a forbidden romance because technically the brothers from each frat hate one another, so the fact that their presidents are boning would seemingly not go over too well. The concept of this book is that Zeke and Charles have been hooking up in secret secret for quite a while. So it has the failed casual trope to it as they start to get feelings for one another. It's super cute and fun, and the series is like, I don't want to say a guilty pleasure. I hate the term guilty pleasure, but that's kind of like, you know what I mean. That's what it is to me. I just think it's so fun. Like, it's so goofy and like campy in a ridiculous way, and I love it. I thought it was so good. It was a good like ending to the series, and I love it. The next book I want to talk about was definitely a surprise for me. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, but I was obsessed with it, and I cannot freaking wait for the second book to come out. That is Prince and Assassin by Tavia Lark. This is a male KU fantasy romance, and it was so freaking good. It follows our main character, Whisper. Whisper is a hired assassin, and he works for this man who kind of holds him captive. This is supposed to be his final kill, and afterwards he can gain his freedom if he wants to, but he is assigned to kill Prince Julian, which is Whisper's hardest target yet. And Whisper is usually someone who just like goes in the dead of night, and he's like very quiet, very stealthy, kills them. He's not somebody who does like a long con kind of job, but that's exactly what this is. He has to get close to Prince Julian and protect him until the time when he is told to kill him. But along the way, he falls for Julian, and Julian in turn falls for Whisper. So things are very complicated. This was so freaking good. I loved it. It definitely was a little bit slow, but I don't know. I live for a slow burn in a fantasy romance. I thought that was excellent. I think I only ended up rating this one 4.5 stars, and I think that's mostly because there was a little bit of like a plot hole slash too easy of a conclusion to one piece of the plot. It was just like a minimal thing, but it did kind of throw me out of the story at the time. So I was like, oh, well, it's not a full 5 stars, but it's one of those books that's like a 5 star in my heart and a 4.5 star objectively. I really loved it. Like, Whisper is such like a sweet little cinnamon roll, and you cannot believe that he is a freaking assassin. Prince Julian just wants to help him out and protect him, but Whisper is supposed to kill him. Oh my god. It is so good. It's so good. But yeah, if you're looking for a good fantasy romance, look no further. This was amazing. And then almost my favorite book of the month was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I have been so excited for this book to come out for so long, and I was so excited when it was a choice on Libro FM's ALC program this month. I snapped it right up and listened to it in a single day, and it was so good. Jeanette narrates the audiobook, and her narration is just stunning. To hear her tell her own story is incredible, and I just really loved this book. This book, if you didn't know, details Jeanette's young life growing up in an abusive household, being forced into Hollywood and acting in a way that she did not want to be. This memoir is really heartbreaking and very difficult to read in parts, but Jeanette delivers it with levity and humor, and it makes it such a compulsively readable story. Like, this was incredible for her debut work. So good. Probably the best celebrity memoir I have ever read. I think it helps that I like know Jeanette and grew up with her and loved her as a child, but just to know like what was going on behind the scenes is so heartbreaking and crazy. But yeah, I think this was such a powerful book. I think like everyone should read it, and if you haven't gotten your hands on it yet, you definitely should. This is a full 5 stars. It could be nothing less. I loved it so much. 100% recommend. And then my absolute favorite book of the month was A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. This book, guys, this book was so freaking good. I loved it. Like, I was screaming, I was crying, I was laughing, reading this book. It was so freaking good. Oh my god, it was so good. Tabbed it up. I love my little red tabs. I think they look so cute. This is so good. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. Okay, this is another arranged marriage story because I'm obsessed with arranged marriage stories right now. And then we're following our main characters, Belle and Kay. Belle, in the beginning of this book, is engaged to be married to this princess in this adjacent country named Tithana for a kind of like trade political alliance sort of deal. But after he is told this, something horrible happens and he is outed to his father. Queerness is not looked upon kindly in Belle's kingdom, and so his father is furious. But the envoy from Tithana is like, oh, well, it's fine. He can just marry the prince instead. So his father, without many options, agrees to this. Belle is just bound by duty, and there's nothing left for him in this country now that he's been outed anyway, so he reluctantly goes along with it. When he gets there, he finds out he's engaged to Kay. Kay is the sweetest golden retriever of a person. It's just perfect for Belle. They agree to be friends and like cohabitate as best as they possibly can, but it's just the freaking sweetest, most pining, slow burn romance ever as these two boys just realize that they're perfect for one another. Oh my god, I love it so much. And in the backdrop there are all of these like political movements. There's a murder mystery going on. There's some kind of like plot against Vel, the alliance between Vel and Kay, and they're trying to figure out who is attacking them, who is behind this, and what they want. The mystery element just like kept the plot moving so well, but there were also at the same time so many good interactions between Vel and Kay. I didn't feel lacking in the romance department, even though it was definitely a slow burn. Some of their interactions just made me fucking scream. Like, it was so good. If you love like a slow burn angsty romance, this is it. This is the one. It was so good. The fantasy world was so beautifully drawn. The writing was amazing. Literally a glowing 5-star review. This will be in my favorites of the year. I loved it so fucking much. Also, it was another Tor book. I love Tor. Tor, sponsor me, please. Work with me. Can I get on your PR list? I love all of your books. Please. If someone has a hookup, let me know. All right, friends. That is everything I have for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here. If you liked this video, definitely give it a like. It really helps me out. If you would like to see more bookish content from me, don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram, Goodreads, if you want to see what I'm reading on the day today. That is all from me. Thank you so much again for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.